approached the scene, and there's a young man on the ground who was bleeding from head trauma and was fairly unresponsive.
The last thing I remember is turning onto Sunset Avenue on the way to Highway 1. That's it.
I was driving home from work one day when just a couple cars ahead of me, a big accident had happened, and so we pulled over to the side of the road, and I told my sister I'd be back to just stay here. And I approached the scene, and there was a young man on the ground who was bleeding from head trauma and was fairly unresponsive, and that the right people who he needed weren't there yet, so maybe I could be the next best thing. The ambulance arrived, and he left, and the entire time I was with Dalton, I was just holding onto his hand because there wasn't a whole lot else to do. It's not really advised that you move people when they've been in accidents like that, and so we just waited until the ambulance arrived.
I had brain swelling, so they kept me in induced coma and in a cold room, and so I think one of the first things out of my mouth was telling my parents to make sure they let Doyle know I wasn't going to be able to make it to practice or weightlifting the next day. And I went to hug my mom, and my right arm didn't move. And I think that was kind of the first time I realized something, one, wasn't right with my arm, and really started to wake up and realize that my body wasn't going to be the same as it was. And they took me in for scans, and they realized that I had torn my brachial plexus in multiple spots. I went into about 8 months of recovery, trying to get my arm to move again. I was able to get hand and fingers and some forearm motion back. Continued to train with the football team. Went and dressed my last and final football game at the Outback Bowl. Shortly after that football game, I signed the papers ending my career as a sophomore at Iowa, and went into a surgery that was in Mayo Clinic. They used some donor tissue and then some of my sural nerve in my leg to do a nerve transplant to regain function in my right arm. Now that football was gone, I was going through this identity change where all of a sudden for 19 years, 20 years of my life, I had been football. It has been a huge part of my family and a huge part of my life. And then it was over. And so I had this real challenge to try to figure out who or what I wanted to be. And about 6 months after I received the transplant, I started getting twitches in my arm. I have full mobility of my arm now. I'd say probably close to 70% of the strength of what it was originally. After being able to move muscles that I had never been able to move before, I knew immediately what I wanted to do the rest of my life. Seeing the benefits of that nerve transplant, I started doing research in the nerve and tissue repurposing and regeneration. And while I was doing research, I met Eric Paul, who had also been doing research on organ transplant. He has 3 aunts waiting for a life-saving liver transplant. We decided to join and collaborate on figuring out ways we could improve or just create value in the transplant space. And then that's when my uncle, who's a cardiothoracic surgeon, pointed our direction towards, hey, there's communication problems that we have. We realized through market research and through a couple of internships that, in fact, this was a problem. About a year after doing research and observations and watching transplants back to front across the country, we launched live in Iowa on January 1st. And so far to date, we've facilitated successfully over 50 transplants. I say we developed an app, but really the clinicians that we worked with developed an app that we gave technical capabilities to do so. And now looking to expand our footprint across the United States. We believe in maximizing the gift of life through better and more intelligent communication.
Seems odd to me still.
Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm so good. How are you?
Good. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
How are you?
I'm good. Oh, so busy. Life has been terribly busy lately. We are both really busy, but I don't know.
Yeah, we try to stay in touch. It's usually probably right around the accident. The lady that I hit sent me a message. I just think you guys might want to hear her story. There was a nurse who stopped, and I am convinced
she saved Dalton's life.
I think I just held your hand and waited. I don't remember what the time lapse was between getting out of the car and like getting there, but I remember seeing the ambulance come up the wrong side of the road and remembering like seeing them, and it was 3 minutes. There was so little time that happened between when they got there and when you were gone, and everything that happened before that, I was there. But
So no matter how humble she tries to be, she did something.
And is a large reason why I'm here today too. So